Aaron Sorkin is one of the most significant film, TV, and theater writers working today. He's been nominated for 4 Oscars, winning for The Social Network. Last year, he wrote and directed The Explosive Trial of the Chicago 7. This year, he's back with one of the delightful surprises of the season, Being the Ricardos, about the extraordinary career and tumultuous love affair between Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. Welcome, Aaron.
Good to be here.
I was blown away by this film. For me, the structure, the Monday table read to Friday taping is everything. How did you discover that and what drew you to this project?
First of all, thank you very much. It was, I think about 5 years ago that the producer, Todd Black, asked to have a meeting with me, and he asked me if I wanted to write a movie about the relationship between Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. All I remember him telling me at that meeting was that Lucy was accused of being a communist, which is something that I didn't know. And so the first thing I did was kind of ask around to see if I was the only one who didn't know that. And it turned out that most people didn't know that. It would take 18 months or so for me to say yes, for me to commit to writing it. It usually takes me a long time to commit because it's a big commitment. It's going to be a couple of years. I'm going to live and die with this thing. Most of it is going to be agony and climbing the walls and being certain that I can't do it. But I found out along the way, along those 18 months, other really interesting points of friction. And I also discovered how many people today have a really kind of intense relationship with Lucy and Ricky Ricardo, and Lucy and Ethel, and how difficult it is for them to separate the actors from the characters. That when you ask someone to picture Lucille Ball, what they're picturing is Lucy Ricardo. Just like when you ask someone to picture Charlie Chaplin, what they're picturing is the little tramp. And those actors don't look or behave anything like the characters that they play. So, you know, what I'm always looking for, like I said, are points of friction that will add up to something, an intention and an obstacle. I felt like I had enough here, and I had it in my head that there was an interesting structure to be had. I really like compressed periods of time. I really like compressed geography. And that if I could tell this story during one production week of I Love Lucy, Monday table read to Friday audience taping, that it could make for some great fireworks, that it could make for real drama. You know, when you bring home a new puppy, they say that you should get a crate that's just big enough for the dog to be able to turn around in, but no bigger, because the puppy feels a sense of comfort and security in that tight space. And so do I. I can tell you that just writing a screenplay, if I have to type the letters EXT period, I start to get dizzy because suddenly I'm outside. There are no doors anymore. There are no entrances and exits. Where are people coming from and going to? So I generally write people talking in rooms.
Well, it became epic from that small space. Nicole Kidman delivers, I think, one of the best performances of the year, if not the best. But the idea of Nicole in the role caused this major stir. What made you certain beyond the fact that she's this brilliant actress, or was it just that?
Well, it was mostly that. But first, I'll say that I had an advantage over the people you're referring to, over the people among whom it caused a major stir, in that I had read the screenplay and knew what the movie was about, and they had. What I needed for the part, I wasn't casting Lucy Ricardo. I was casting Lucille Ball. She was going to have to do little shards of I Love Lucy throughout, but I needed to cast Lucille Ball. I needed a world-class dramatic actress with a dry sense of humor and a real facility with language. And that was Nicole.
That's certainly, oh my God, she's amazing. In the film, Lucy has to deal with this potential instant career ruin. And you've been quite vocal about how Twitter has become the McCarthy trials of our time. And I completely agree with you, by the way. How do we battle this? I have so many colleagues who don't seem to think that way at all.
Well, the way I would love to see it battled is for it to not be given oxygen. It's okay for us not to care what people are saying on Twitter. I grew up listening to sports talk radio in the car, and on sports talk radio, you get dozens of people calling in and talking about what the coach did wrong and he should have done this and not that and that kind of thing. And even back then, when I was a kid listening to the radio in the car, I knew those people. There's a reason why they're not the head coach of the New York Giants. And you just have to kind of shrug it off. But what you wouldn't see the next day in the sports section of the paper was a story about how, well, callers to WFAN think that he made the wrong call passing instead of running. In other words, legitimate journalists didn't care what those callers said. And in our industry, journalists shouldn't care what people are saying on Twitter.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely. Lucy had to deal with all these male egos, as well as the restraints on her at the time. But even with all that, she was still the most powerful person working on TV.
She was the most powerful person in television and wasn't allowed to act like it a lot. At one point in the film, she says, I navigate male egos for a living. I'm not sure that much has changed from 1952 to today. But she understood that being that powerful and a woman at the same time was going to make men angry and jeopardize what it was she was trying to do. Even though Desi, we learn, dealt with that in the most destructive way to the marriage imaginable, the fact is he was one man who was incredibly supportive of her power. He kind of needed this private time to not be second banana. And it was a fatal flaw built into both of them that would guarantee that these two people who loved each other passionately till the days that they died weren't going to be able to make their marriage work ever.
It's so ironic because that notion of home, she was able to create this home that millions of people came into each week and felt comfortable in, and yet in her own life.
That's right. And that's why that home, that postage stamp sized living room that the Ricardos lived in, was the only place where her life worked. It was the only place where it felt like home. So that at the end of the film, I won't give away a spoiler, but when she gets the news that she gets, her response isn't to stalk off or scream or smack Desi across the face. Is to say, let's just start the show. Let's do the show. Let's go. Let's do the show. She just so badly wants to get into the Ricardos' living room.
Yeah. You've got to be aware of your gifts as a writer, for lack of a better way of putting it. Does it come easy for you, the process, or does it depend on the project?
It does not come easy. For people, I've been asked, do I get writer's block? And I laugh at the question. Writer's block is my default position. I have occasional bouts of having an idea and being able to write it. But most of the time, I'm blank. I'm climbing the walls. What I need to write is an intention and an obstacle. Somebody wants something standing in their way of getting it. And the tactics that your protagonist uses to overcome the obstacle, that's going to spell the story. Doesn't matter if he or she succeeds or fails at overcoming the obstacle. It's going to be the journey. But until I have the intention and obstacle, I mean, that's just the drive shaft of the car. You can't do anything until you have that.
As a writer, I'm just absorbing.
Okay.
I just spoke with Andrew Garfield yesterday, and I asked him
Oh,
this question. Yeah, if you had any idea when you were making The Social Network that it would be this prescient piece of groundbreaking art 21 years later.
um, no, I certainly didn't. Here's what I knew. I I thought I'd written a good screenplay. I knew that David was going to make something beautiful. I knew that these actors were great. What you don't know is any of that going to matter? Is it going to amount to something? Is it going to land with the audience? So no, I didn't know. But can I tell you something really quick about Andrew Garfield?
Sure.
It wasn't until the wrap party, the night of our last day of shooting, that I heard him speak in his real voice. From the moment he came into audition through the last day of shooting, he spoke with an American accent.
Oh my God! Wow.
So much so, I mean, obviously, I knew he was British, but I thought maybe he's just lived here for so long. I stopped thinking about it. And then, very casually, he starts talking to me in his real voice, and it knocked me over.
I think you'd really appreciate that. He's such an immersive actor.
He
Uh,
is. He is. And one last thing, since you brought up The Social Network,
sure.
that's really where I made my directing debut. On the last day of shooting, same day I heard Andrew Garfield's real voice, David Fincher. That last day was an easy day. There were 3 things we needed to get. They weren't difficult at all. And while the crew was setting up for the second of those 3 items, David called me into his trailer and said, "Listen, let me tell you what's going to happen now. I'm going to get this shot, and then I'm going to get in my car and go home. You're going to get the last shot of the film." And I thought he was kidding. I was sure he was joking. And he said, no, I'm serious. And I still thought that he was joking. But then suddenly people started coming up to me, like the second AD, to have me approve extras. And somebody, I'm approving wardrobe, and I'm being called over to line up the shot and ask for it. And David did get in his car to leave. And I think he did it for 2 reasons. One, he hates sentimentality and didn't want to say goodbye to anybody. But the real reason was he didn't want me to feel like a little kid who's been called up to the cockpit of a plane and, "Look, you're flying the plane now, Sonny." He wanted it to be real. You've got the last scene. So that's where I made my directing debut.
That's pretty amazing. Well,
1.4 seconds of The Social Network.
well, The Newsroom, one of the most insightful TV shows I've ever watched. And you took so many hits and were forced to explain yourself, which you shouldn't have had to do, in my opinion. We need that show so desperately today. Aaron, come back.
Oh, what a nice thing to say. I appreciate that. Thank you. I think, I think there was writing that show, I just never quite felt comfortable in my chair. I always felt like I had a pebble in my shoe. I could write some good scenes, but I had a tough time putting a really good, solid episode together in spite of great performances that were being given by the cast. But I also think that the show, me, and journalists got off on the wrong foot. I think that there was a feeling that the reason I had said it in the recent past was so that I could show the pros how it should have been done. And that was the farthest thing from my mind. I said it in the recent past so that I wouldn't have to make up news. So it felt
Which
like
makes
it's taking
sense.
place in our world. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I always felt. And again, I also have to ask you about Jane Fonda, because she's a hero of mine. And my God, what a magnificent
You
performance.
picked a good hero. She, listen, I don't need to tell you what kind of actress she is. She's phenomenal, has not lost a step. But she's just a magical presence on the set. I really could not get enough of her. We were so lucky to have her.
How does it feel for you to be in the awards conversation now with Being the Ricardos?
Well, I'm superstitious, so I'll just pretend I didn't hear that.
Okay, then I didn't say it.
Okay.
You've got three solid directorial credits. I thought Molly's Game was extraordinary. Chicago 7 blew me away. Thank you so much, Aaron. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your craft.
Thank you for everything. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you.